All right, aloha all. Michael here. Another episode of the Science and Spirituality series that I am conducting to just get to know people, their points of view. And these will be posted on my YouTube channel, Everard Music, as well as in the Sight Sound Spirit group on Facebook. So I wanted to introduce Nicholas Matula. Nick, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I always get stuck on these. Well, I lived out there in Hawaii for about 10 years on Oahu, same place you're at now. We probably met at one point in the music industry out there. And I've had, I guess, since I was a kid, my mom always introduced me to meditation and energy and metaphysics. So I've always had an interest in it. I've always been, I guess, spiritual, but never religious, even though I come from a Catholic background. I do have 2012, I was initiated in Freemasonry, which has a lot of opinions, I guess you'd say, and controversy.
Sure.
It did initiate me into the awakening process, I would say, and it does hold merit. I guess it goes back a long time. You know, nobody really knows how long these rituals have been done, but they do overlap with scriptures and biblical historic fact. So basically, it just kind of opens you up to your path and purpose, whatever that may be. So 2017, I had a massive Kundalini Awakening right about the time of the eclipse, just after in 2017. And it's been an adventure, to say the least, since then. I know things that I shouldn't know because I didn't learn them anywhere. Kind of like Neo in the Matrix, things started getting downloaded, and it's been a rough ride. But I'd say at this point on my journey, I'm pretty balanced out and been through a lot. But I have made a few videos on my own, and I do post a lot of stuff on social medias, and I do work with people on one-on-one basis. I also work with tarot and astrology, and I do have an education with a science background, and I do believe in pretty much a lot of the same stuff you do, as far as quantum mechanics and that alternative view of the world at an energetic standpoint.
Awesome. Wow. Let me sort of just tell a little bit about myself in case this is the first time you're watching one of my videos. I've been a philosopher. I'm going to say most of my life, I've always been willing to ask questions and contemplate these things that occur in reality. As far as a religious background, I was raised in the Presbyterian church and had some issues with the whole idea of going to hell and all of that stuff, and basically went on my own journey and basically discovered that there are other doors of perception. Back in 1992, I did a lot of acid and started to realize that there was a lot more to this thing called reality than we have been led to believe. I got clean and sober in July 6th of 1995. And during that leg of my journey, I just basically lived sort of a normal life, had all sorts of different kinds of jobs. And in 2020, April 12th of 2020 to be exact, which happened to be Easter Sunday, I had sort of the revelation of knowing why I exist. And I realized that I had to get back to work And I used the opportunity of being locked down to do some real deep soul searching. And I didn't realize at the time that it was actually research about consciousness. And that whole idea of exploring sort of the metaphysical realm and the realm of anything being possible got me to think that feelings are the most effective form of communication in the universe. So I've been writing books. I completed my Sight, Sound, Spirit trilogy on August 8th. And on August 9th, I started the next series called Connections. And then I have since then began writing 4 other books. So I have basically 10 books that are in the works that I, at least based upon my production of anywhere between 500 and 1,500 words a day, what I'm doing is just sort of seeing a little bit into the future, in that I feel like I should be able to complete all 10 books within a year. And I'm just really excited and have enjoyed the opportunity to get to meet other people that are on a similar type of journey, a spiritual awakening, one of enlightenment. And that's basically where I'm coming from, at least from a standpoint of what I am writing about and what I'm thinking about and what I'm contemplating, and then sharing. So what is it that you feel is important in terms of being spiritual? Like, what are some concepts that you would like to share with us as far as your perception of those concepts?
Well, I guess it would be getting in touch with our higher self, or that higher power. I do believe there is a power greater than ourself, which we're made in his image. So we're a reflection, and we have access to this information, kind of almost like a mainframe computer. And we are able to channel that information. We have to be in alignment with the energies. We have to, in my experience, through meditation, it allows me to connect to this information most people don't even realize is coming in 24/7 for everyone to access. A lot of that has to do with what quite honestly, what they put in our water supplies and in our food at times, and maybe spraying in the skies. And
Sure.
it's a spiritual battle. People don't realize the people running our country, running this world, know exactly what's going on spiritually. And they know what's happening as astrologically that's going to affect people as masses. And when we also understand and see what's going on, we can kind of predict what's going to happen. We can see what they're doing on the world stage and how it's all, intertwined. And it's really, I don't believe, it's very hard for me to believe that things we experience that may be have adverse effects or desires for most people aren't there to shake you up and wake you up. I do believe, like with the lockdowns and everything, I do see the spiritual aspect to this, and I've done research, and plus I've had access as to all this is going someplace, and there's a reason for it, and we just don't want to fight it. It's like just take advantage of the time that we've had, and a lot of people have, and done that deep introspect, and a lot of people just kissed it off too, but I believe it catches up with you.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the idea of causality, and what is the role of causality in this thing that we call reality?
You mean like a collective consciousness, or?
Well, whatever you would like to describe. So let's just say, what is your interpretation of causality?
Why everything is the way it is. I believe well, everything's quantum. I do believe there's different levels of consciousness and we have access to them all. More of I it's kind of like we're living in an RPG, like a role-playing game, and that's the way I view it. When I step aside out of myself and I observe, let's say, my avatar and what's happening in the people around me, I believe everybody's playing a role. And quite literally, everyone is part of that universe, and it revolves around each person. You know, everybody is the center of their universe.
Right.
And everybody else is a supporting actor in their role. So, you know, it's like the most complex game. I believe everything is tallied, almost like, you know, do good unto others. Okay, we're going to put a notch in your belt, you know, and all this at the end of the day is kind of like tallied up, and it's like put into categories, universe, by like a universal, like nobody has control over it. It's just the way it is. And I believe that's what a lot of universal laws talk about and stuff, and why it's important to understand them, because they might be able to be bent a bit, but at the end of the day, there's a reason to the madness. You know, it's not so mad when you understand what's happening, and you can get a bit of insight on that.
Right. Yeah. And in terms of quantum mechanics, and the reason why I am just like, I'm thrilled with not only what I am attaining as far as that type of information, I've basically allowed myself to learn more about it without this idea that you have to be like a mathematical genius, for example, in order to understand what wave particle duality is, or superposition, or some of these other really interesting aspects in regards to quantum mechanics and quantum electrodynamics, which I'm just recently started to become familiar with by watching some lectures by Richard Feynman. And it's like, I'm so much, I just enjoying watching him enjoy the process of teaching and sharing that information. And the thing that I sort of came to realize maybe a year ago is that everything is just information. So everything that you experience, and we could view these experiences as opportunities to detect the information. So we have a nervous system, we have receptor cells, we have the 5 basic senses, and yet it seems sort of ironic, and I like the word ironic because it starts with ironic, that people are still very reliant, again, on using only their sense of sight to ascertain the overall value of the information that's being presented. So if, for example, we choose to be frustrated or angry with what we see when we turn on the TV, well, if you know that the role of the mainstream media is to confuse you, it's not to present you with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It's there to literally cause the cognitive dissonance that we all have a tendency to feel. So instead of getting mad and saying, oh, well, it's just all lies, well, if it was all lies, we wouldn't believe it. So there has to be at least partially accurate information that's being presented in order for us to believe that it's happening. And then our belief system comes into play when we understand that we have this really interesting ability of being able to not only use perception, which is just a way to convert the signal, it's the ability to adjust its focus and to literally change our perspective by changing either our geo positional location, or we can use our inner vision to change our mind and have a new angle at which to view whatever it is that we're observing. Because observation is not just done with the eyes, it's done with virtually all of your senses, because it's all about detection. And I'm just enjoying this process, because I view everything from a neutral observational perceptual standpoint, and I'm able to sort of find the balance and then evaluate. So there's a difference between being prejudicial and evaluating the information in order to understand it. What are your thoughts on that?
Experience is a big part of the process. Without the experience, it's what's defined as a false teacher a lot of times, because you're speaking from things hearsay. You haven't actually gone through something yourself enough to advise somebody, look, I went through this, I understand, I know from my own experience, this is what happens. It's just like, I don't know how many people want to tell me, this vape right here, it's all over TV. You see, it's bad for you. It's worse than cigarettes. You're going to get popcorn lung, all these fear tactics. But I can tell you from my own experience, from smoking for 20 years, going to a little vape system, that I breathe 95% better than I did when I was smoking cigarettes. So from my own experience, I can tell you something's off with the information. But, it says in scripture too, that my people die from lack of knowledge, because they don't take the time to go out there and learn. They just listen to what the masses are saying. As far as, there's got to be truth in everything. Actually, they can't even by universal law deceive you without telling you what they're doing. So it's having that higher vision and to be able to hear what they're telling you. And there's a lot of symbology and everything for the eyes and ears that can hear and see that this is what we're doing. So don't get involved. This is for the people who need to learn. And some people need to learn a little bit harder, but there's a business in it too. So of course the system's been corrupted. Everything will come into balance again. It's just the way it works from what I've seen. So it's like everybody right now, the whole world's coming into balance. What they have to do, they had to shut the whole world down. So just to give people a new perspective.
So what I'm able to do is know that there are certain things that are man-made, and yet I feel like everything is divinely inspired. There's a reason for everything, and God, being omniscient, knows everything. And then now we're talking about the difference between a deterministic universe and one of free will. A lot of people, and one of my favorite things to talk about is free will versus determinism. I believe they coexist, and it's just like anything else. If you can find the relationship and use relativistic physics to understand that from a human standpoint, our greatest gift, aside from just life itself, is this ability to exercise our free will. And I used to view consciousness from a standpoint of being able to alter the effects of the experiment, let's say. And one of my favorite things to do in regards to understanding quantum mechanics is just to take the double slit experiment and to interpret the different variations and the different variables of that experiment to come to my own conclusions. And what I've done is basically been able to know that everything is conscious, at least to a certain degree, and consciousness is everywhere and everywhen, because we have this thing called space-time where there has to be a combination of those two properties, and those two properties are infinite, they are non-physical, and yet they are also measurable. We can measure time. We can say, oh, well, it's, measuring time is just a man-made. Well, of course, but what's wrong with that? Why do people get all caught up in, oh, that's just man-made? Same thing can be said about religion. People are very quick to judge religion and say, oh, well, they're just hypocritical. And yet, where do we get the information that has resonated with literally billions of people, except from the sacred text, whether it be the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, the Tao Te Ching, all of these pieces of literature, and my background is English. I have a degree in English.
And I have all those books sitting right here on my shelf. So.
Yeah, and why would you say no? I don't like that religion before you even experience it. Why would you? And why would you have a problem if, for example, somebody is, let's say they are a born again Christian and they enjoy life and they appreciate what God has created. And let's say they are not judgmental. So a lot of people have this idea that, oh, Christians are just being judgmental. Well, some are, but aren't you being judgmental if you're saying that somebody else is being judgmental? Why would you predetermine the value of any experience? And if it's meant to happen, it's gonna happen, right?
Yeah, interesting thing about all those books. I've had the conscious insight of how everything is relative, which Einstein tried to explain. There is everything's related, and that's when he started getting into the theory of everything, and quantum took off from that because it hit a tipping point. So now you had to advance the physics, but each one of those books or religions that broke off of it in different parts of the world were awakened men who were speaking. And a lot of people think, Jesus said, so the what we want to see and we've been shown is that there's this Jesus guy, and there's Matthew and Luke and all these people standing around a circle listening to him. They all had their own experience with Jesus,
Right.
internally, and Jesus spoke to them. Jesus said, when I embraced this Christ consciousness, this is what was spoken through me. And so they wrote it all down, and they did this all over the world, and they had their different labels attached to it, during these waves of consciousness that would occur, ever so often. Now, right down to, you look at Abraham and Moses and all these people, they were all messengers, messiahs. They all spoke to God. God spoke through them. So same with Buddha and all these, they had that internal wisdom and knowledge which they tried to explain, which can't be put into words, which is why the experience of higher consciousness is so important to understand. And until you get there and you experience this, you really can't judge these other religions or belief systems, because they all are linked to one, in synchronism. It is all one. We are all one. I'm just going to say something of my own experience yesterday with we're hearing this Johnny Depp and was it Amber Heard? I don't even know her. Whatever. What is it for? It is a distraction. We know that. There is a plan regarding why they're playing it right now. I had a friend who went to court for a situation the other day, and she told me, she goes, I think this Amber Heard, Donnie Depp thing is playing it influenced the judge, and she made a decision. I said, do you really think the judge is sitting there? She goes home and she turns on the Johnny Depp trial. I say, you don't think she has something more important to do? And she goes, oh yeah, she must have, because this is what happened. And I'm like, it's the consciousness. It's the reason they're putting it out there is so why? Because when you observe it, so you got all these people focused, observing this, and they're putting it in their consciousness, and it's flowing into the rest of consciousness. So she didn't actually watch the trial, but she was influenced consciously by it. And that's why they do a lot of these big acts and things. And if they can get everybody to fear or whatever it may be, they're going to, it hits that tipping point to where it flows onto the rest of everyone else. And there's people who can stand back like me and observe that and go, wait, she didn't watch it. This is what happened, I believe, because I can feel it too. And when these big events happen, I can feel it, but I don't join in. I try to keep a neutral standpoint myself.
Yeah, I do too. I I posted a meme. I'm gonna try to remember what it was exactly. It was a joke about, it might have been in regards to the monkeypox thing. And and it was basically a statement of, oh my gosh, it's monkeypox season and I still have my Ukrainian decorations up.
I posted that somewhere too. I saw it.
Yeah. So
you got to find the humor in all this,
if
so you can break away from it and look at it as like, okay,
right.
I'm not getting attached to these outcomes and
I'm not falling for it because of the deceptions of the last 2 years in regards to certain mandates and things of that nature. Why would we believe the mainstream media has our best interests at heart?
Here's something I learned when I was in the Freemasons, when I went through all these rituals. Like, anybody can learn about them, but it's a matter of going through them in the right manner that it actually might take an effect on you. However, when I got out of that, I walked up to the big guys and I said, so where's all these secrets? This is a secret society. Don't I get in on the secrets? And they all laughed at me. And I'm like, what's so funny? And they're like, there are no secrets. They're like, everything's in plain sight. Says now, pretty soon you will be able to see what you couldn't see before. And you'll realize it's always been there. But the only thing is you have to see it. So the secret is within you. It's not something they're keeping from you. It's something you're not aware of yet. That is right in front of you everywhere.
Right.
And eventually I did see that. And when I did, there's no shutting that off. There is no turning back. And it's a curse and a blessing, because majority of the people around you aren't going to even be able to see it when you point it out to them. So.
And how funny is that? I mean, I'm still amazed at, I'm not surprised. As my awareness expands, I am less surprised and more amazed.
Yeah.
And thrilled to be alive. I feel like this, if you're not grateful to be alive and observe and witness what is occurring, you're not paying attention. I mean, it's
gratitude
pretty obvious.
is the big kicker there. It's like through everything comes gratitude. You can't take anything personal. You have to be grateful to be here. You have to be grateful to be in good health. And if you're not, be grateful to be not dead, because other people are, and people are leaving every day here. It's revolving door, this earth. So we have the opportunity to be part of all this, in the physical. So everything here that we do is man-made, but we are an extension of either the ego or the hand of God. And your level of consciousness is going to determine which role you play.
Mhm.
And the more that, there's balancing and tipping points of consciousness. So when enough people wake up, the rest of the world's going to start to wake up. And that's what we're seeing right now. And that goes with anything. So now that we're all waking up, they're like, oh, here, another hoax and false flag, cover your mouth and stay home, stay safe, because you can die just breathing the air. I mean, it's ridiculous. But how many people out there are actually living in this fear?
Yeah. And
that's what's going to kill you.
Well, yeah.
Manifesting.
I mean, obviously. And, I want to be careful because I have been sort of, we'll say censored, if we want to use that.
Understood. Yeah, we can be careful, more careful.
I do recognize when people are intentionally causing confusion. We could call it deception. We could call it whatever you want. I look at it as simply as this. If I am aware that there's no such thing as a waste of time because it's infinite. However, if I'm also aware that I can invest my time wisely, how would I do that? Well, it's simple. I feel like if you simply spend your time by focusing on how you're currently feeling, you're going to be in your present moment and you're going to experience exactly what you're meant to experience. Maybe not what you like. It's what you need. And reality doesn't happen to you. It's happening for your benefit. You are either going to learn from your experiences, or you're going to continue to make the same mistakes over and over again. And it comes down to your level of certainty. Are you comfortable being certain that you are going to be safe? Or do you prefer to feel free to determine your own reality? I'm a free will agent. I love the opportunities to experience what I want to experience. I also take full responsibility, not only for my actions, but my thoughts and my feelings, because all of these things are going to be reflected and it's going to influence those around us. If you are claiming to be, let's say, a light worker or someone that's enlightened or awakening, and you choose to purposely confuse others for your own enjoyment because you think you're right about something and you feel like it's your job to tell people what to think, that's a really interesting form of spiritual abuse that I'm finding. And I've recently had to sort of discontinue the conversations with certain people, and nothing is forever. However, many people are going to pass on into the next realm without realizing that they have created everything that has occurred in their reality.
Yeah. Gosh, I just drew a blank. That's weird.
How powerful?
Okay. I understand here. There's when we become conscious, there's the alignment with what's called divine will. It becomes our free will. We now choose not to personally attack anybody or to be self-destructive. We come into a level of acceptance, and we want to naturally we want explanations for all these unseen things. That's why we have science and physics and mathematics and everything to try and, logically make sense of what we don't understand, and we experience around us. I'm missing the point where you were going.
I think what I really just wanted to do today is sort of highlight just how powerful consciousness is.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it is.
Oh yeah, consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah. No, here's the thing. Here's the thing with consciousness that I'm finding out is that, and I came to this realization, it was either yesterday or the day before. I think a few days ago, it was the idea that consciousness is experiencing itself. And then yesterday it was, you know what? Consciousness is actually all that there ever was, is currently being, or will ever be. It's all consciousness.
Yeah. I now I remember what I was trying to think of. That you were talking about was the deceivers out there, people who are purposely deceiving. There's a lot of people who are the biggest deceivers are the ones who aren't purposefully doing it. They are deceived themselves, or they have a false belief system based on a collective experience or some part of they want to join in with. So they don't know what they're talking about. They do some reading and some research, and then they make it sound like, and then it's called half truth at that point, because they start putting their opinions on all of it that may not be relevant, and because part of it is true, they're leading people down a path that either they aren't ready for, isn't for them, or the teacher hasn't experienced themselves yet. So it's not open for opinion, or think about this for a minute, this is what I learned, and it's like, this is what is now. And because I believe this, I'm going to influence you because I'm an influencer. So it doesn't give people an open forum to have their own opinion about it. And then they start blocking all the people who disagree. So now you don't get the contrast. There's always going to be contrast. And I don't believe most people, there are those, but I don't believe most people in these spiritual communities are purposefully deceiving people. But there are those entities, of course.
I would tend to agree with that. And I think, and at least what I'm finding, and at least what I found with someone in particular, is that they are purposely confusing because they believe that they are right. And it's like they're conducting some sort of psychological experiment to see if they can bother people enough to where he can get them to admit that they're bothered. And then it's like, well, why are you bothered? And it's like a game. And
I see.
It's something interesting that I'm coming across. Now, there is this thing that we call the belief system. And the thing with beliefs that I learned 2 years ago is that beliefs are paradoxical by nature because they are only partially true. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have beliefs. It means pay attention to what you are believing in. If your belief system is such that you're able to allow yourself the freedom to explore and create and use your imagination, then without imposing your will onto others, then awesome, go for it. If you're believing that it's your job to tell other people what to think or what to believe or how they should feel about things, and this is really funny that a funny phenomenon, as it were, as far as what the mainstream media does. It's like, oh, I'm not sure what I should be afraid of. I better turn on the TV to find out. Yep. And
it becomes part of your identity. So
yeah. It's just interesting. What I'm finding out about myself is that I do have discernment. I do have preferences. I like to see people enjoying themselves. I do not like to see people suffering. Simple. Now, can I appreciate the interactions with virtually everyone? Yes. However, I'm also able to determine when the conversation has reached a point of termination where there's no longer a willing exchange of information. And I determine that based upon how I feel. So if I am, let's say, initially disturbed by something, I allow myself to see what's up and explore. What I don't allow myself to do is to remain in that state of anxiety past the point of the lesson itself. So if I can, let's say, learn to appreciate a person, place, or thing, and answer the question, one of my favorite questions of all time is, why does it exist? If I could answer that question, I may or may not even want to bother learning more about how it works or some of these other things. I can just go on my merry way. With quantum mechanics, I am just so in awe that I keep on striving for more. So even though what I learned in regards to Buddhism is to never get attached to anything, and it can be a physical thing, it could be a non-physical thing, a thought, an idea, all of these things. If you become too attached to anything, then you're going to begin to fear losing that thing, and then that's going to create a whole other realm of suffering for you. So I just allow myself to experience life, and then if I feel free enough to express how I'm feeling or what I'm thinking, whether it be doing presentations or having conversations like this or writing about it, then that's why I'm here. I'm here to sort of not just observe, but to interpret the information and then pass it along. And some of it's going to resonate with people, and some of it I know from experience that it won't, and I'm okay with that.
Well, I mean, I've seen several of your videos. I enjoy watching your videos. Everybody has the opportunity to change the channel. But there's what, millions of YouTube channels out there and Facebook profiles and groups. So if somebody's not happy with the situation, it's their own decision to stay there. And
right.
But we live in a dualistic world, so there is always going to be that contrast in society, that if there wasn't deception, we would never seek the truth. So and therefore there wouldn't be something called unity. If you it's not to pick one side or the other, but we have to experience both sides to understand what like 0 point is, where God's perspective was in the creation of such things, without judgment on it. And it has to be a lot of acceptance. You can't have attachments to anything. I've learned they only lead to disappointment. And attachments have been part of my spiritual journey, have been exposing where those attachments are to things, right down to having to lose everything several times on my journey, physical, people. And now I get to the point where it's like, okay, well, that could happen. So it's like, I'm just going to stay present here, and I'm not going to worry about the future or who's going to be there, who's not, what I'm going to have. Everything seems to be provided as I need it. And I've been forced to test this on my journey, that there is a force that we don't see, that kind of calls the shots. I've had to work without money for long periods of time and to trust and have faith. And I watch everything magically appear, and it's undescribable. There is something happening behind the scenes we don't see. We'll never fully understand it. That's what makes philosophers out of us. That's right. What's always made philosophers and, scriptures and religions and there's nothing, there is no answer you're looking for outside of yourself. And once you get to one level within yourself, you're only going to have more questions, in my experience.
Yeah. In fact, somebody, I posted something, it might have been one of my videos, and one of my friends made a really good point about questions. And we actually already know the answers to all these questions that we think we have. And I could totally resonate with that. And it sort of inspired me to write more again about consciousness. I have like 8 articles recently that are part of one of my new books called Observations. And the title of, let's see, the title that I started working today is called How Does Consciousness Know When It Knows What It Knows? And I thought you might appreciate that. And here's the first sentence. A question is simply a quest for ions. To ask a question is to request more information ion. Okay. And it's simple. It's our curiosities, our willingness to learn go hand in hand. If you're satisfied and you're peaceful and you're comfortable, then you know exactly what you need to know. You don't have to know anything more. A tree, for example, knows exactly what it needs to know to perform all of its different things like photosynthesis and all of these wonderful processes that create oxygen. I mean, if that's not a miracle in and of itself, I don't know what would qualify as a miracle. So even if you are an atheist and you believe that God does not exist because you require physical evidence, well, the physical evidence that God exists is the universe.
It's everywhere.
I mean, you know, come on.
It's right in plain sight. It's everywhere.
It's right there before your eyes, and seeing is believing. However, believing, remember, it's only partially true. So it is paradoxical. There's no problem with believing in something unless you are confused and you find that you are having an issue of some sort. And if you take responsibility for your consciousness and you resolve, okay, it's not solving problems, it's resolving the answers that are already there. So
it's
right,
it's a lot of this life is remembering.
Yeah,
it's already there. So it's remembering.
Yeah, putting it back together.
Yeah,
recollecting. So you first have to recall. You have to ask for the information, and you recollect it, and then you remember it as you put it back together. And then it's like, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, okay. Now that experience makes sense. Now I know why it occurred. And it's only ever occurring in your imagination, everything. And when I say everything, I mean literally everything. So we have this shared reality because it's believable and it's self-sustaining because of these, 8 billion some uniquely qualified observers of reality that are projecting their streams of consciousness based upon their belief system and how they've been willing and able to interpret the information to their level of satisfaction. When you're satisfied, you've reached a level of contentment, and it's like you feel like it's like, okay, cool. And to me, that's fun, and that's how we can use our feelings. And it requires faith, because faith is the trust in things you cannot say. And it is part of your belief system. You have to believe that what is occurring is really happening. And then what can you do with that information? So every experience is an opportunity to learn more every single time.
If you know, that's the thing. You know, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, but that teacher is also the student of the student. You know, it's always a back and forth. There's always, I mean, unless you're going to just be preaching, which is what a lot of these people do. That's why I kind of like how you interact with people, and it kind of, that's how I operate best too. I really have trouble just talking to a camera. You know, it's like, I like the interaction. I like the questions. I like other people's insight and understanding and understanding of things. It's, we all can work together to, you know, become one greater version of ourselves collectively.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. That makes perfect sense to me. What I feel like we're experiencing currently is sort of the final exams. So all of these are just tests of faith. And you know, we talk about the spiritual war is actually just an internal battle. What is it do you feel is the ultimate lesson plan? What are we really doing here, Nick?
Remembering who we are, remembering our power, and remembering a lot of our mistakes too. And everything comes in cycles. It gets really complicated when you get down to that kind of a question. But I operate near 100% faith-based. I don't worry about anything. I don't, people try to get me to worry too, you know, and they'll say, well, you know, yeah, sure, I'm a Christian, but what about this? And well, why, what are you just going to let that happen? I'm like, what control do I have over it? I mean, it's like, I'm going to allow it to happen. I know I'm going to be okay, because the things I have survived in my life, the things that I have seen in front of me with that third eye operating, it just goes beyond comprehension. I can't outthink the consciousness of the universe. I have to become one with it. I have to observe it, and I have to allow it and know that it knows what it's doing.
Wait a minute, Nick. Hold on a second. Hold the phone. What are you telling me? That you don't know better than God?
Heck no, man. As you know, when I had my enlightenment, it was like all things revealed. Every question I ever had was answered. And in 2017, it was like getting hit with a bolt of lightning. I had all these skills and knowledge and different stuff that came into me. And my biggest question was, well, what is this I'm seeing? Where is it coming from? And who's doing the showing? You know, because I was an atheist when it happened to me. Now, I will say agnostic. You know, I certainly was not a Christian mindset. I would say now I'm more of a Gnostic Christian if I had to put a label on it. Spiritual is where I kind of like to keep it. But I was talking in IMs, and people were saying, you know, that's in the Bible, right? And I'm like, I never read it. And it's like everything that I was like, I was able to, I picked up the Bible and I started reading it. And I was like, I got a question. Now you can do it online. So I was like, well, let me put this in here. See if that comes up the way that I see it. And sure enough, it says, oh, yep, that's the way it is. I'm like, well, I know that. And so I started looking into all these other texts in the Bhagavad Gita and Taoism and Buddhism, all this stuff. And they're saying the same thing. The same answers, just worded differently, are in all these texts. But that's what it is, the truth and knowing. And when you receive what's called this anointment or this massive awakening to the truth, you don't need to learn anything outside yourself. You reflect with other people, because everything you ask for will be shown to you. You know, when you really think about, you know, you want something that really boggles the mind, is how our eyes work and what are we actually seeing. and how everybody sees the same thing. You know, I mean,
But they
it just
interpret,
blows my mind when
it
you actually
differently.
understand what that takes for it all to happen, that miracle.
Yeah, and a good thing that we have a unique perspective, and therefore the result of that is a very special, a very special interpretation of the information. So right now we are using our sense of sight and our sense of sound. The other senses are, at least the other three of the basic five, are not relevant to this particular conversation. And one of the other things that I came to realize about a year and a half or so ago, I came up with a description of what I call the 8 earthly senses. So the 5 basic senses that seem to be relevant to the electromagnetic spectrum. So the physical energy and matter. And then what we have is 3 non-physical senses of space, motion, and time. So there's something called proprioception, which is an actual thing that has to do with your spatial awareness and where your body and limbs are in relation to other objects. So you use that when you get up in the middle of the night to use the restroom, for example. You don't have to turn on the light. You know that if you swing your body a certain way and you plop your feet on the ground, that your feet are going to hit the ground. You don't have to sit there and go, oh my gosh, where is the ground in relationship to this and that and the other thing? And you don't have to think about, calculus and force vectors and all these other things. You just know how much energy and the direction to move your limbs in order to take the action of motion to walk to the restroom. So it's so your awareness of space and your awareness of time and every experience, and actually your awareness of motion as well, because you feel when it's time to stop moving your arm from here to here when you take a certain action. You don't have to think about it. You just do it.
I believe it was your discussion where you were talking about the blind, or somebody brought that up. Wasn't that your discussion a couple days ago?
Yeah.
And they were, how do blind people see? I mean, there's stories of what's his name? Not Ray Charles, that other guy, singer,
Stevie Wonder.
People swear he can see. He that could be part of the Hollywood deception too. You never know, because we aren't Ray Charles and we're not his best friend. But there's, I did a big, because you'll get this thought in your mind and go, I wonder, is that possible? So I think there was something where Shaq said on TV, that he was in an elevator with him and he knew who he was, and all this kind of stuff, and he was being quiet, and and there was something where he caught like a mic stand on stage that he shouldn't have been able to know was falling. But what is it? Is he actually blind, or what is blindness?
It's extrasensory perception that once you lose, or let's say you're born without a sense of sight or a sense of sound, for example, the auditory sensory perception ability, your other senses are going to go into extra
like
activities.
Yeah,
hyperdrive. I love that. And people are going to learn that they already have this extrasensory perception. So extrasensory perceptual skills such as telepathy, telekinesis, clairaudience, clairvoyance, and clairsentience, all of these things are real, unless you say, no, that can't be, I don't believe it, and then fine, you're never going to experience it for yourself, and you're not going to believe someone that has experienced it as it is explained to you from their personal experience. So again, the whole thing with experience is that we can only begin to have an idea of, let's say, how somebody feels if they've gone through a similar experience. We can relate to them.
Yeah.
But even then, we don't know how other people feel. We can resonate. We can feel other people's energy. Okay, 100%. It's still not possible, although anything is possible. It's not yet possible for me to know exactly how you are feeling or how you are perceiving this shared reality. And that's okay.
It's so complex.
I don't need to know. It is on a need to know basis, because you know exactly what you're supposed to know and meant to know.
That's what I try to explain. Like with my enlightenment, I was shown only what I needed to know. Everything, right. After that came, life moving forward again. And all there were more questions and whys, and how come, I seen this, and then you watch things play out and you have this insight. Why would I, it's like there's people who ask me things all the time, or I have prophetic visions, and I will explain. Sometimes there were years before I said this is going to happen. Like I knew the COVID thing was coming. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I told people they better start preparing, because something big was coming. A lot of people weren't going to make it. And it was a test. It was, and I've done a lot of research and meditation on this to confirm or deny certain aspects of it, which is a whole nother conversation. But, like it all comes down to how we feel and our emotions. Yes. Emotions, even when God speaks to me, it's through emotions. It's through a knowing. There Feelings. Is no voice that I don't hear voices in my head when I say God speaks to me. It's almost like looking through his eyes, or he's showing me what he wants me to see. He, she, both actually, because it's the alpha and the omega. So what is it? It's consciousness and
the
balance,
whole thing,
polarity.
The whole thing with all of that is it's a great conversation starter. The truth is, only God knows everything that there is to know about God and the universe and reality and all of these processes and functions. And I surrender my will to God, and I do so freely because I am observant and I am a servant. And I am simply expressing myself based upon my experiences and my understanding of these interpretations and therefore perceptions of reality. And why? Because it's fun. I'm having the time of my life. I am literally living my dream, because my vision of reality is becoming clearer and clearer. And I aspire to inspire. I am not interested in telling people what to think, what to believe, or how I think they should feel about X, Y, and Z. It's just unnecessary. I used to get, really disturbed with certain things, and I still do. There are things that disturb me. And, gosh, the serenity prayer comes to mind. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. If people just follow that.
That's why they say it at the end of every AA meeting. You know why? Because more than not of our collective that are, in that higher consciousness, or light workers, indigos, whatever, label you want to put on people on a higher level spiritual journey at this current time. were most likely alcoholics or drug addicts, and or there was some other sort of addiction, which could have been sex, could have been just simply hoarding stuff. It's and usually one falls hand in hand, but one thing's for certain: on this journey you will be humbled. And we went through this so that we would be allowed to destroy that illusion. But it's almost like we knew from the beginning. I've explained to people, if we could have had a bottle of vodka when we were like 2 years old, we would have started drinking then, because most of us had a higher conscious level at that age, where we already knew. Like I can say, when I remember, I don't tell many people this, but when I was 3 years old, I was just kind of recalling. I remember waking up with my parents in bed one day and looking at them and going, who are these people? What am I doing here? And I had this emptiness and homesickness in me. I couldn't have been more than 3 or 4. Does that mean I don't love my parents? Of course, I still do today. But there was already a recognition of something's wrong here. It's like something's not right. And it's always, for a lot of us, people want to be a light worker, they want to be a twin flame, they want to be all these levels of ascension that are happening, but a lot of people who want to be there don't realize how much pain is involved with this transformation.
It is
you will be humbled.
Oh yeah, well, if not, then you're going to continue to experience the pain and the suffering and the misery until you decide that being in those states is no longer a benefit. It's just a detriment. It's a limitation. And yeah, my first awakening occurred when I was 3. My twin brother Patrick poked me in my left eye with a toy gun. And it was like, it had to have been extremely painful. I'm guessing. I don't remember the pain. What I remember is the awareness of, oh my gosh, my parents are stressing out. I hope they're okay. And then I started to think about my brother and thought, oh my gosh, my brother's going to get in trouble for what he did. So
who taught you that? Who taught you that?
No, well, I know God did. I mean,
no person did. We already knew these things.
No, exactly. So you're born innocent. You're born perfect. So the moment of conception is where you cross over. A lot of people believe that the opposite of life is death. It's not.
Agreed.
It's birth. So the transition, and maybe I take back what I just said. The opposite of death, a lot of people believe, is life. The opposite of death is not life, it's birth. My definition of birth is not coming out of the birthing canal. That's just a leg of the journey. I believe the moment of conception is the initial stage of life. It's where you have recycled from the spiritual realm back into the physical realm, and it's the reunion of the ovum and the sperm. So the sperm being the alpha and the ovum being the omega. So it's the 1 and the 0 that's reunified at that moment where you are a living being. And it's a miracle. It's the whole idea of reproduction and all of these biological processes are just fascinating and awe-inspiring. And if you don't appreciate your life, there's a reason for that too. what is it that you can learn? Well, what interests you? I mean, if you feel like, oh, life sucks, this is boring.
Perception. You got to
Yeah.
shift your perception. That
Yeah.
says, like in Romans 12, renewal of the mind, is necessary. It's also like myself personally, I was reborn. And as Christians want to say, call a reborn Christian, people that go to church, they'll say a prayer and they'll believe they've been reborn. It requires a death. So most people experience what would be called like a dark night of the soul in this process. And a lot of people in the world right now are experiencing this as a collective, or have. And, for myself, I was healed of all my ailments. I anti-aged. So there's a lot of stuff that sounds outlandish, like somebody might have lived for 900 years, but I have blood tests that proved that I was regenerated when I discovered Christ and had that Christ consciousness overcome me. I went and had my blood work done, not knowing what had happened to me, having no idea what, just like something huge had happened. And it was very traumatic, actually. I can't get into the details of it, but my doctor took my blood and said, hey, what did you do? And I'm like, what do you mean, what did I do? She goes, your blood work is like perfect. And she goes, no, it's actually better than perfect. It's like, and they were all around me and they want to know what I did. And I said, really couldn't tell you. It's like a spiritual awakening, ascension.
Yeah.
And they're just scratching their head. They said, you have the blood work of a 9-year-old. And I was, suffering from liver failure and all these other things that were happening. And I didn't ask for none of this. It's the weak and the wretched, are the ones who are saved, so
Right.
it's there. This is a grace type thing. And it's, like I said, it's kind of, I've tried to be good to everybody my whole life. So at least the best I knew how to be. Didn't mean I didn't make mistakes, but my heart was, I tried to always do the right thing. And I think there is, like I said, I think it's like tallied almost. And it's like, okay, that guy, he sucks, but boom, because he's been through so much, he's got a lot to teach. And let me show him a thing here. And it's kind of,
you've
not a
been
free
leveled
ride.
up.
Yeah, it's a level up. It's like, okay, he's, so somebody is watching. That's the thing. And these miracles do happen, but we don't have any, I don't believe we have control over them, at least, because I certainly didn't ask for anything that happened to me, that I'm consciously aware of, not in this life, except surrender. I was done. I didn't, things get so hard sometimes. And I think it's designed that way to where you work completely surrender to what is. And you then at that point, you're given a different perspective. And here, okay, maybe this will make you feel better. It's just, there's things that are hurting here. Let me fix that too. And okay, now that I've shown you this, go show others and go teach other people what you learned. But how do you do that, except for how we're doing it now?
That's right. This is the way.
It's through experiences. We all have a different experience. I don't expect anyone to go through experience what I did. If I find somebody, that's kind of cool. If it's a different method of getting there, there's everybody, the whole Bible's full of perspectives, of people who claim they met Jesus. So, not one story is the same, but they overlap. So that's what we have to look for, the similarities instead of the differences in each other. And that's what we can teach each other from our differences.
I love that. And that makes perfect sense to me. And it's simple. It really
everything is simple.
It's as simple as you make it. You have the ability to reduce the complexities by converting these signals into the resonant frequencies of your consciousness. And that's how it's done, at least the functionality part of it. And going back to, causality, every effect is preceded with the cause, and every cause creates an effect. And regardless of where you draw from the storyline of your history, every moment that is a memory was significant enough to be imprinted into your consciousness, and it will be passed down onto, to your offspring. And
Right. What I experienced was for me to experience,
right.
In order to be able to do what we're here to do, be the best version of myself. And it's painful to have to let these belief systems go. And I have to do it over and over again. In my, experience has been, once I think I know something, here comes another, as we call it in tower moment, that's going to completely destroy what you think you know all over again. And it's going to give you set back, and you're going to look at it from a different perspective as an observer of, hey, all this, here's a new set of information now. So now we're going to sort this out, and you're going to sit there and go, okay, I don't know anything again. I know a lot, but I don't know as much as I thought I did.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
So we're always learning. We have to, you have to learn from each other, and you have to be open. Or, if you're asking for the truth, you're going to get it. And that's to remain open and allow and be humble.
Yeah.
And not take anything personal, because everybody's teaching you something.
Yeah. One of my favorite books is called The Four Agreements. And don't take it personally. Don't assume, and be impeccable with your word, and then do your best in those three things. If people read the Four Agreements and they practiced the Four Agreements, things would be different. So all of these offerings, all of these pieces of literature, and not just religious texts or sacred texts, there's philosophies, there's schools of thinking, there's to a certain degree science, of course, as well. There's a spiritual aspect to science, whether or not the scientific community is willing to admit that or not. It's there because of wave-particle duality. Wave-particle duality exists in everything. So take any thing, any concept. Let's take space-time. Space is the wave, time is the particle. If you look at the difference between space-time and the universe is the particular formation of physicality, and space-time is this formation of non-physicality that causes the universe to appear. And what do you do? What do you do with the information? Well, you either appreciate it, and every time you appreciate something, it's because you have literally observed it. You've detected information, you've felt it, or you've sensed certain frequencies of energy that have benefited you, that have rejuvenated you. And sometimes it's a physical upgrade, sometimes it's an emotional sort of cleansing, if you will. Sometimes it's a mental clarity, and it's all for your benefit. Reality doesn't happen to you, it happens for you.
Everything's a warning sign. If things aren't going smooth, you need to take a look at it. If you're struggling, if your health is struggling, the pain is a trigger. It's telling you something is going on with you, and you need to take a look at this. It's sometimes it can be as simple as, hey, I broke my arm, it hurts. The bone's sticking to the skin. I'm observing this, that's obvious. But what about the pains that we have that we don't see an obvious reason for? Is a reason for it. Once we figure out what that is, and we get to the source of it, which could be emotionally or mental, once we deal with that pain goes away.
Yes.
And the body does what it does best, and it wants to heal itself.
100%. You have to address those issues, and the intensity of the signal, and it might be pain, it might be pleasure. The more intense the sensation, the more present you should be and pay attention, because the universe is offering you the gift. the gift of that particular experience, that event that was meant to happen is happening then and there. It's not it's happening in your here and now. It's not happening in a future, and it didn't happen in the past, because all that is ever really occurring is a series of present moments.
Yep, I agree. Actually, I was thinking of something before that now that you mentioned it, present. There's a lot of words with the word present in it. Represent, represent. So if you're representing something, it's something you realize in the present that you're representing, that it could only have been discovered in the present. Future represents the future. I think that's what it was, something I was writing to somebody. Present time, something about representing.
Well,
the future. The future is only a representation.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And think of the word present as having two meanings. It literally means your moment of now, which is the gift.
Right.
Because it is a present.
Yep, I agree.
Who or what is offering the present? Well, it could be any conscious being. And guess what? Everything in the universe is conscious.
Yeah,
consciousness.
Don't look that gift horse in the mouth, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, again, when people demand physical evidence in order to verify the validity of something existing, well, if you're thinking about it, it already exists. It may not yet have been actualized in physical form, but if you're thinking about it, you are realizing it. You're taking the information and you're doing something with it. It's going to have a physical effect on you, because it will affect your emotions as well as your mental state of being. And those three work together very nicely. So this whole idea of, people are stuck in the 3D world. Well, everybody is exactly where they're meant to be. So one of the things that I sort of laugh at is when people say, I need to wake people up.
Yep, exactly.
Says who?
Nobody woke me up. There was no one person that said, here, because I'm showing you this, it's going to change your life forever. And it has to, like it was their job. No, it came from somewhere else that I can't put a finger. And there was nothing I could do to prevent it. There's nothing that accelerated it. There's nothing that I could have done to stop it. When time came for me to wake up, I woke up, and I continue to wake up on different levels as I level up. So I try to explain this. You're troubling yourself by trying to wake people up. Only thing you can do is lead people by example and from your own experience, in my experience.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that's the only way. I'm saying that's what I realized in my experience.
Everyone will either come to their own conclusions or not, because everybody is actually experiencing free will, whether they are aware of it or not, whether they believe that free will is an illusion or not. If you believe that everything is predetermined or preordained, if you like that word better, that's still a perceptual choice from your point of view, because at the end of the day, like I've said this before, and I'll say it again, the only thing a human being can know for absolute certainty is how they are currently feeling. Everything else is icing on the cake. Everything else is going to be a matter of interpretation of the information based upon the experiences that are occurring. And what do you do with the information once it resonates with you? Well, you can say that you now know something more about yourself and more about whatever it is that you're studying. Doesn't mean you know the absolute truth, the end all be all of anything for that matter. However, the more layers you uncover, and yeah, it's going to require going down this rabbit hole.
Yep. It has to be a decision.
It has to be a willingness,
Yeah,
and it is a decision. You have to decide to be willing to learn more, or you're not going to learn more.
Well, that's what again, the serenity prayer, but I think it's giving your will and your life over to the care of God. That's a decision you make. Now, once you do that, everything's kind of on autocorrect. So it's like, all right, now you're going for this ride. And I still haven't exactly come off the ride, so I don't know how I know where it began for me, but I don't know how it ends. That would kind of ruin the surprise. So once you do make that decision, you start to, it's part of that surrender process. And then you are humbled to a point where you have to accept what's coming in and this new way of looking at things. And part of that is that you don't know everything. You constantly end up going through this surrender process because you'll get frustrated and it gets uncomfortable. And when you've learned to be so present, to worry about anything really takes a lot out of you, and you realize it's unnecessary, as well as what happened in the past. Don't always remember what you learned and how you learned, but don't dwell on it because it's still not present. And present, see, it's like all I have to do is take a deep breath and I can go into the state of meditation these days where everything is blissful. That doesn't mean it's absolute happiness. Doesn't mean it's like there isn't anything that's bothering me. For that moment, I can just take that moment. And in that moment, I'm present and everything's okay. And that's the practice. And we'll go through these extremes till we can learn to get to this peace within ourselves. And the mind chatter stops, and our heart expands, and you realize that we're one with our Creator, and that is love, regardless of anything else going around on you. It does not affect you now, unless there's the police are at your door knocking it down, and still you'll have that moment where they're not there yet, and you can say, and then you'll have all this peace in jail where you have a lot of time to yourself, if that were the situation. So you can always find this peace.
Yes.
Mandela did, and look how he came out of prison. So he was a president of his country when he came out. So nothing is unattainable through presence.
That's correct, because everything is information. So one of my favorite passages is Matthew 7:7. Ask and ye shall receive, seek and ye shall find, knock and the door will be open. And the reason why I feel that's important, well, first of all, you really should read Matthew 7:1, which is judge not lest you be judged yourself. And then all the way through to Matthew 7:7, because it's basically a guideline that's showing you what to pray for, what to ask for. So when I hear the word ask and you shall receive, well, what should you ask for? Ask for guidance. What are you seeking? Seek the truth. Seek as much truth as you're willing to accept, because the truth doesn't hurt. The truth will set you free. It's denying the truth in these things that will cause us pain and suffering. Yep. And then knock on the door and it will be open. What is the door? It's perception. It's where you receive. Now we could talk about it as the inner vision, the third eye, the pineal gland. There's all sorts of ways to view all of these things. I'm starting to think that the pineal gland is the gateway to Christ consciousness. The inner vision is the passageway between this 3D world and what I consider to be the 5-dimensional realm.
And there's higher dimensions than that.
Oh, absolutely.
They just can't. I've experienced well, as much as I've experienced, and I can tell you 5D is the only frequency right now that can be grounded on this earth. You can experience the higher ones, but you cannot stay there. 5D is being integrated now, and it's because so many have waken up. And we're not saying woke, people. Woke is the
No,
introduction to, okay, maybe I got to look into some things a little bit more, but you're not enlightened because you're woke. You're far from it, because I was woke once too. And I still may be a version of woke, because I haven't experienced anything other than where I am right now.
That word is hilarious.
Yeah, it is. It's used in everything, even the media now. And it totally is a different version of the way we use it in the spiritual communities. So they're using it as all the agendas. If you're woke to the agendas and now you see that you need to do things their way, you're woke. That's absolutely, even when I was woke, it was like, wait a second. These people, you got to watch out, because something's going on here that's not supposed to be. I don't understand it. But I can tell you, to get to the next level, there's only one thing I asked for, and that was truth and wisdom. Only thing that I can recall coming out before everything exploded, in my consciousness. Truth and wisdom, that was it. I hear that's all that Solomon asked for too, after doing the research 2020.
That wouldn't be a surprise at all. I admire people who are willing to undergo these transformations. The only way to transform oneself is through these experiences where you are obtaining the information. One of my, I don't want to say new friend, because I've known him for a couple of years, but only like a week or so ago started talking to him. David Chanthavong, I don't know if you know him yet. Check him out and friend request him, and you'll become more aware of Buddhism. He's was a Buddhist monk, and he continues to practice Buddhism, and then he's also open to learning more about other religious faiths and philosophies. So he's really, really a great resource of information. And one of the things that he taught me very recently, if not yesterday, is what the word attainment means. So you can obtain the information, and you can even understand it to a certain extent, until you understand it and you see that what you know can and should be shared. Then you will learn what it means to overstand. And I think when you attain levels of awareness where you have gone from this level of understanding, which is a good place to start. So if you understand where somebody's coming from, it doesn't mean that you know how they're feeling necessarily, or what their intentions are, anything like that. It just means that you're willing to continue the conversation. And
I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, exactly. and the next level of, we'll just call it awareness for the sake of conversation, would be the understanding. It's like once you have learned something from the experience, and then you make that information your own, sort of what Bruce Lee did with martial arts. He learned from different styles. He kept the moves that made sense to him, and he made them his own. And the moves that didn't make sense, he just discarded. He didn't bother with. So not every piece of information is going to be of benefit to you, although you can appreciate it, that it is at least potentially useful, and you won't know until you experience it. So therefore, continue to process the information to a point of where you understand. And then if that is where you are feeling peaceful, then you are successful. You have successfully learned what you were meant to learn from those experiences. If you want to go deeper still and become a true master student, then dive deeper and overstand. When you overstand something, you've reached a level of awareness where you know exactly why that thing exists. You will understand its functionality and how it works. And then you have a whole new set of information that you can consider knowledge that you can then share with other people. So that was just something I sort of realized yesterday with the word attainment.
Yeah, understand is kind of like once you take something to heart, the inner standing. It's like now you know, and why is the overstanding, because you're like your direct communication with like the oversoul, so the higher self that we communicate with. When I take in information now, I don't let it affect my heart. Like it says in scripture, protect your heart too. I observe and I allow it to process how it needs to process. But I do not, I don't even make a decision on anything. Sometimes I do, because it's like I already overstand something. So, okay, the rest of it's going to process a certain way, but I'm not taking anything to heart until I choose to process it or not too. I can just wipe it and go, I don't want that on my mind, because it keeps me from being at peace. It's not important. There's a lot of things that happen around us that just aren't important. And that's other people's business, or it doesn't affect you directly.
Yeah.
So in that matter, we have a choice. Does that make sense? It's kind of like what
no, it
kind of
makes
describe
perfect
how
sense.
I see what you're saying.
We always have a choice.
Yeah. But we don't know we always have a choice when we've been slaves to the system, for such a long time and born into it that way. Yeah,
we've been programmed, we've been conditioned. Once we
break them chains, I'm a free man.
Yeah, what we can do is defrag our hard drives. So we have to the idea of being brainwashed. Well, I hope that I have the ability to wash out all of this corrupted information. So I'm going to brainwash myself whenever I feel like I'm too toxic. And I know exactly how to do that. There's different strategies. One of the ways that I do that is I play my guitar. And there's always a way to recharge your battery, as it were. And it's always a choice. Now, I have some mental health conditions. I have depression, I have OCD, I have ADHD, and then I'm a recovering addict. Does that mean that I'm never going to become addicted to anything ever again? No, of course not. I get addicted
different
to
levels and stages of everything. So
yeah, I look at it, all of these conditions, as gifts, because what I'm able to do with these conditions is use them to better understand why people do the things that they do. There really is nothing that somebody can do that really will surprise or shock me anymore. I'm still I can become disheartened or very disappointed in people's behavior. However, I do know why people do these destructive kinds of things. It all goes back to fear. And everybody is afraid of something, and everybody has different levels of fear. Some people choose to live fearful lives. I choose to live a fearless life. That doesn't mean that I'm never afraid. It just means that I am learning how to be more faithful and listen to my instincts and my intuition. So if something where red flag goes up, for example, I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to become aware of my surroundings, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to know that there's going to be an experience that's going to change my life. And I also prepare. I know how to prepare my mind. I consider myself to be sort of a peaceful warrior. And I know that if I need to tap into, like, say, my primal rage, I can do that. I know how to do that. I hope I never have to tap into it again. It's been a couple of almost a couple of years that I, like, just got pissed, like literally like yelling at someone on the phone. I prefer feeling peaceful, although I can appreciate that power that we have. If we are in physical imminent danger, and let's say somebody backs us into a corner, we can tap into rage if we need to. I also studied Aikido about 19 years ago for about a year, and then 2 years ago for a few months, until I realized that I have vertigo, and all of these moves just made me nauseous, and I couldn't do it anymore. But the sensei taught me something really important, and that is, you could practice Aikido in your everyday life. It's not just about physical interactions. It's about emotional and mental interactions, and spiritual ones as well. And the idea with Aikido, and I spoke about this in my conversation with David and another new friend named Halim, is that you first begin the conversation with how you perceive the being that is going to participate in an exchange with you. So if you can do that, instead of saying, oh my gosh, here comes somebody that's going to attack me. Well, if you view that being as an attacker, you've already sort of set yourself up for a conflict. Because if you're going to be attacked, right? If you're going to be attacked, then you have to go into defensive mode, right? Instead of doing that, if you view every experience, every interaction as an opportunity to first blend and merge with and exchange the information, and then resolve whatever conflict that other being has, you are already peaceful. You're just simply showing them how to express that anger and toxicity and resolve it into a state of peacefulness. And this is something that I am learning how to become more aware of, instead of fighting these, let's say, disturbances. I'm learning how to learn from them and merge with them, and become one with them, and ask them questions. It's like, okay, so a disturbing thought popped in my mind. What's going on? What, what?
Observe your own thoughts.
Yeah.
And your own feelings. It's be the observer. It's like you're saying in the beginning, like we were talking about emotions and feelings. Control over emotions is one of the most powerful traits you can have, because very few people in the world have control over their emotions, and a lot of things are reactive and mostly fear-based reactions. Or
the thing I feel that people misunderstand with emotions is that you can control them. However, the best way to sort of use them is to express them. And if people are not taught how to express their emotions, either through art therapy or any sort of artistic expression, then they're not going to be able to control them, and they're going to overreact.
Find a way to channel those emotions before you have to react on them. But
yes,
the reaction is what's dangerous. It's like instant, because it's in your programming. and you're going to defensive mode already. You're even before you're attacked, you're already in defensive mode, you know. So I was going to read something real quick I wrote that was in alignment with what you're saying. I posted this, it says 8 hours ago, and it was, like any computer, our files can be corrupted by malware and viruses, interrupting our operating system to perform as designed. Reincarnation is also like transferring files from an old computer to the next. We must explore and unzip these files full of previously known knowledge and wisdom. In doing so, we also discover old programming that will not run on the new operating system. It must be purged. Sometimes even a factory reset or a dark night of the soul may be in order. That all present programs and upgraded downloads work in unison harmoniously. And then I added on the end of that, Romans 12:2, which states, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what is God's will, his good, pleasing, and perfect will, or divine path and purpose. And, you know, I put Romans 12:2 at the end of it, but I put it as ROM, you know, as a computer, what is that? It's read-only memory.
Oh, I love that.
So,
that is perfect. Nice.
ROM 12:2. It's because I'm not trying to tell you what to do here. Read it and see how it sits with you. You know, this is my way of understanding how we all operate in this realm, is like a computer. You know, our mind works like a computer, and it goes and it wants to run itself. You know, when we realign with our creator or our higher self, it's a completely different operating system, and you can't take that old way of doing things with you, because it's just going to want to kick itself out with that. The virus detection devices. Oh no, you don't. You know, it's like not in this new guy. You know, I don't want your junk.
Do me a favor, Nick. Post that what you just read in the Sight Sound Spirit group. I think people would really enjoy it. And I pulled up your profile. You haven't posted anything yet in the Sight Sound Spirit group. You
know, I'm in so many groups, it's hard for me to keep track of which ones and sites. But once I put it in here, let me just go to my search engine.
I take everything that I post in the Sight Sound Spirit group, and then I will post it in, gosh, as many as 50 other groups. But Sight Sound Spirit is a group I developed. Originally, I just called it Michael Everard, and it was originally intended just to post excerpts from my books. And then about a few months ago, Facebook made it available. It made all groups. It gave people the opportunity to visit groups and post in groups even before they were members. So then people started posting, and it's like, oh, okay, well, let's see what people have to say. And the only thing that I ask is that people just refrain from anything of a political nature. So if people ever want to post anything, and you want to know the difference between it being a political post and a spiritual one, well, if you turn on the news and you feel compelled to talk about anything that's being portrayed in the news, then just consider that to be political and not really what this group is all about. So anything spiritual, anything about consciousness, anything about religion, if you practice a certain religion and you want to share something about your particular faith, awesome. Perception, reality, quantum mechanics, all of these things are more than welcome. And what you just read resonates so deeply with me. I've very often thought about simulation theory. I've even written some things about how there are these parallels between humans and computers. I came up with a title for something that I have not yet written. I call it Organic Synthesizers, Synthetic Organizers. So we are organic synthesizers. So we're living biological beings. We have a nervous system. We have a respiratory system. We have an endocrine system. We have all of these systems working together. And neuroscience just is totally fascinating to me. So neurotransmitters and hormones and endorphins and, all of these things that cause us to feel certain things and to have these sensations and to allow for certain biological processes in our bodies to continue. It's all very fascinating to me. And I just really loved what you just read, and feel that it would be a really great
Sure.
thing to post in the Sight Sound Spirit group. So
these are the
feel
types
free.
of things that come to me when I wake up first thing in the morning.
Awesome. I love
it's
that.
like
Yeah.
it's like, wow, yeah, it's like, okay, let me write that down. I've tried
Yeah.
putting a book together, and that obviously it's not my calling right now, and there's more to learn before I put something in print. But
Sure.
I put little things, I just, people like to dismiss social media, a lot, and I really feel a lot of people involved, their life is present on it, and so many people put themselves out there, and they also look for information there. It's an extension of us. So
Sure.
it's also I get messages from people all the time, that was like, if I hadn't seen your post, I was on my way out type thing. So I try to be just positive and post things that are meaningful, especially when I'm picking up what's happening collectively. I try to post something that's going to resonate and at least bring you some comfort, or knowing you're not alone, going through what you're going through, because times do get tough. I mean, nobody's out here saying life is easy. It just doesn't have to be as hard as we make it out sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Support is a big thing, a support system, especially being that we're all raising in consciousness, and nobody's done this before. We didn't learn this in school, so it's
no.
But we got bits and pieces of everything that helps us understand, the foundations, of it. Just, we're really, when it comes down at the end of the day, things are too complicated to know anything in its exact workings. It's just, we all discover a piece of the puzzle again, it's like a new piece. And it's acceptance has been a big thing for me, and not having to know sometimes, but it's good to throw things around and see where we're at,
100%. 100%. Any conclusions or final thoughts? I feel like we've had a great conversation, and I would love to have more in the future if you're up for that. Any final thoughts in regards to what we were talking about today?
No, I think that kind of was my final thought.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I really appreciated this opportunity to speak with you. We've been friends on Facebook for a while. I don't even know how long, maybe a year or so.
It's been a little bit longer. I keep an eye on people. I don't always say something unless I feel it resonates with the messenger,
Right.
And I do resonate with a lot of the things that you post, and what doesn't, it gives me a new perspective on things too, because I can see, hey, look at this different way you view things that is not off from the destination of being, which is presence. So that's the only destination I have. Where things go from there is a mystery, and that's what makes life worth living. But it's people like us that can throw things around like that, and I just don't I don't speak that often, and I don't do that much right now. It's been a lot of time I've kept in solitude, and inner work I've been doing, so to better help others, in the future, and you just got to do that inner work sometimes. So I'm just pulling out of that now, and this is actually the first live I've done with anybody in close to a year.
Oh wow. Okay.
Been a lot of life-changing events, and I look forward to doing more.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure and an honor to get to know you better. And thank you for a great conversation. Thank you for all that you are doing. Everything that you do is adding value to this experience. So our shared realities are blending and merging. And whenever we have these kinds of conversations that are open to discussing these concepts, I just like talking about these concepts. To me, this is fun. And if I think of myself in any way, shape, or form as being a type of person, I like to think of myself as a philosopher. I am very scientific. I am very logical. I'm very intuitive. I'm creative. I'm all these other things as well. But if I were to place a moniker on me as far as what do I do for a living? Somebody asked me, what do I do for a living? I am a philosopher. Simple.
Well, I feel, if any man who has higher awareness is going to explain what they learned, they either don't speak at all or it's philosophy,
Yeah.
So we can only say, hey, this is what I've seen and this is how it relates to so many things, but who knows what it really is still, So philosophy, I think, is really all scriptures are philosophies and allegories, and
sure,
it's the best they could do with what they've seen so far up to that point.
Yeah, 100% right. And I love that perspective and take. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate the time. And
thank you for having me, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
Great. All right. With that, I'm going to say namaste.
Namaste, brother.
All right.